We have to sign this.
Yeah. Waiver.
Yes. Good morning, Ms. Mitchell.
Morning.
Thank you so much for agreeing to help me with this assignment as a PhD student at Regent University. I know that this is probably a busy time for you. This is in the middle, the peak hurricane season.
September 15th.
Let's pray we don't get any storms. Please, please, please. So
Yes.
thank you so much for agreeing to help me with this disaster management assignment and to share your expertise and experiences. Thank you so much. So could you just tell us a little about yourself and your experience, your background in disaster management, including your current role?
Okay. All right. Well, my background in disaster management started in 1999 with Hurricane Floyd. I was actually a field reporter at the time with a local radio station here on Grand Bahama.
Wonderful.
And there was a call that went out asking for volunteers to help with transitioning the island back to normalcy. And as I was covering the story, I noticed that there was not a lot of Bahamians coming forward at the time offering their services to help, volunteer to help the island or people get back to normal. So I decided, well, I'm covering the story, I might as well help with the work as well. So that in turn started my transitioning into the field of disaster management.
Oh, wonderful. So what is your current role?
Okay, so currently I am assigned to the Ministry for Grand Bahama with the responsibility for the disaster management unit. And what that entails is that I'm actually the liaison officer for our ministry, who is responsible for going and checking with all of the government departments as well as the private sector, and to assist them with any disaster management related activities or things that they would need. And that being, it could go anywhere from training to emergency response needs to drills, simulations, anything that they require assistance with through our ministry. I'm the point person for Ministry for Grand Bahama for that.
All right, so co-deputy chair. Who's the chair?
Yeah. Well, the chair is actually for the Grand Bahama Disaster Consultative Committee, it's called. The chair is actually the sitting local government administrator for the city of Freeport, and that's Mr. Kenwood Cartwright.
Yes.
Yeah, so he is the sitting chair. Now, I served as the deputy co-chair of that committee for about 20 years, and I recently decided to step away from that and allow other persons to come forward and see if they can offer their services. The thing about being that deputy co-chair, it was a volunteer position. And when people hear the word volunteer, but the magnitude of work that it entails that you do is almost like a paid position, but it was never a paid position. It was never meant to be a paid position.
Wow. So it's called the Grand Bahama Disaster Consultative Committee. So we'll just refer to it as GBDCC.
Yes.
Moving forward. Who else comprises this committee? Who else is on this committee?
Okay. Well, the Grand Bahama Disaster Consultative Committee comprises of government and private sector partners, and everyone comes together, form one unit, and we're responsible for emergency response needs for the island of Grand Bahama. So everybody brings to the table their roles and their responsibility for what they would do in the event of an emergency or disaster. Like case in point, we know security. When you think about security, that's the police on island. When you think about security on the water, that would be the defense force, or even with their subcommittee lead would be BASRA, for example. So that is how the unit is formed.
So it's quite multi-sectoral.
It is definitely.
Because you need these expertise from all over the place in the face of a disaster.
Right.
Wonderful. And as far as contributing to disaster preparedness, what are some of your responsibilities and your office and committee?
Okay. Well, when we're talking about contributing to disaster preparedness, one of our main focus we're trying to also get the residents of the Bahamas to understand is that we're not focusing just on hurricanes. A disaster could be anything that is out of your scope that you can control.
Yes.
So it could be flood, it could be a massive fire, it could be an oil spill.
Tsunami,
Yes, a tsunami. All of these are things. So the focus is that when we're doing our makeup, we want the public to understand that because we are now in the hurricane season, we know this is the primary focus for everybody right now. So in terms of our roles, we have regular monthly meetings with all of those agencies that I spoke about, the government and the private, where we get together, discuss challenges, discuss triumphs as well, and see where we need to do any tweaking. And then we update everybody on what is happening in your interdepartments, and then we will have reports for one grouping, which is the whole island.
Oh, wonderful.
And that is presented to the minister or whomever would need information to say, what are we doing in terms of being ready for the season.
Yes, that's a very good point you made as far as the disasters, because when Bahamians think of disasters, we automatically go to storms.
Yes.
But I did have a look at our disaster plan, and I noticed that there was a whole wide range of disasters mentioned there
Yes.
that the plan speaks to
Yes.
in specific ways.
Yes.
But of course, we're always thinking hurricane,
Right,
hurricane.
yeah, because it's the one that's we mostly face. It's hurricanes, which of course we now know comes with flooding and it could also possibly come with fire.
Yes,
Yeah, so,
definitely.
yeah.
So what other disaster-related committees
Mhm.
are on the island?
Well, the key thing is you don't want to have a lot of committees. You always want to see the island as one unit. Now, every agency and every department has their own individual emergency response plans and committees. And those committees or those plans are supposed to tie into what the local plan for the island speaks to.
Mhm.
And then our local plan ties into what the national plan says that we should do for the island of Grand Bahama. And it's important for it to be like that because when we look at the international market, what we do here is supposed to marry so that, for example, if somebody comes into our country and has to assist us, they're able to speak the same language because our
Yes.
plan is speaking the same language.
Yes. So is there any level of accountability and control, or is it just up to the various agencies to to basically follow the guidelines and plans set by, well, we have NEMA here, National Emergency, well, it's no longer NEMA.
Right.
Is it up to the individual committees, or is there some, are there guidelines to follow?
The guidelines are actually the emergency response plan because you have a plan, but one of the key things with plans is little things can come that's not even a part of the plan. So the emergency response plans are actually guidelines, and they're tweaked often. They're tweaked from time to time because you have something else that somebody didn't think of.
Yes.
But once you follow the basic guidelines or the basic plan, then you can see where you could actually stop or even assist something that is happening.
Mhm.
So the key thing is to have that plan, and then you have at least that guideline to go by. And every company, and that's why we ask them as part of the Disaster Consultative Committee, share your plans with us. So
Wonderful.
for example, you have a Buckeye. We know that they're a transformation hub for oil transshipment. They have their own protocols that they would follow for emergency response if there's a spill. We have the Leviathan up in East End, different plan. But those plans are shared with us so that, God forbid, if something happens, we know what are their emergency protocols that they would do to alert the public. And so once we're aware, then we can assist them. For example, if they need international assistance with help coming in, then that is where they would bring it to this office or to the minister or to even NASA to say, hey, we can't handle this, we need to bring in international help.
Wonderful.
So that's why it's important for everybody to know, to share your plans, even the airport, all of those are things that we would need to know so that we can assist you from that top level through our permanent secretary and our minister, who would be our primary person to say, hey, they can't handle it, they need outside assistance.
Great. That collaboration is so
Very
very
critical.
critical.
Yes.
And even as I went through the plan
Mhm.
and I I looked at your incident command system.
Mm-hmm.
I admittedly was kind of taken aback because there are so many agencies involved.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And I wondered, in the face of an emergency,
Mm-hmm.
how that would look with all of these various agencies. I noticed that it's scalable because the person in charge can say, okay, we need this
Yes.
person, we need this, and that's fine for this emergency. But for an emergency as grand as Dorian,
Mm-hmm.
how did we manage all of the police or what? How did we
Yeah.
manage all of these systems?
Yes. Well, obviously, when we know that there is an imminent threat headed to the island, we have a timeline that's supported by the Department of Meteorology. When they say, okay, at this time, we're expecting, for example, we use Dorian. Dorian is going to be headed to Grand Bahama at this particular time. So we follow those timelines. And once the Prime Minister, who's the ultimate person who calls to say, hey, activate the Emergency Operations Center, once he gets notification through the Met Office to say, we need them to be open and ready. Once we get that call, the Emergency Operations Center is activated, and all of those agencies, private and public sector, will come to the EOC. And this is where they begin to now put all of their individual persons, their key, their sub-leads, their committees together to say we are now at level 1, level 2, or whatever the level will be. And then they begin to now say, well, this is what we need to make sure we have in place. This is what we need, how many persons we need. For example, if they said the shelters need to be activated, automatically social services, which is the department responsible for shelters, they now have their timeline, and we say to them, activate how many shelters. They now begin to do their feeders with their people to say, activate the shelters. They have a timeline when they call their volunteers together who will be working in the shelters, and they have a timeline when the shelters are expected to be up operational and the doors open, ready to receive persons. We have the police. They will begin to put their plans in motion, checking their communications, checking to making sure everybody in all of their various sub-offices are aware there's a threat. Get your plans together, get your home secure, report for duty. Of course, the Defense Force, everybody's called off vacation.
Yes.
So we do things at that level. And in the meantime, we're here in the office making sure all of our internet connections are up, the office is set up to receive the persons coming to work, the EOC, the accommodations, sleeping arrangements, food, water, all of that stuff is ready for when people, because we don't get to leave until the stand down order is given. We actually sleep, eat, breathe, and live in the EOC until that storm is no longer a threat.
So the EOC is actually here in this building?
Yes, the EOC was here even for Dorian. The thing with Dorian is because Dorian came with, of course, we know a lot of flooding. So even though we had water protrusion in this building, it was on this first floor. But we immediately were able to go up to the second floor where we just reconvened, and then the EOC was set up on the second floor. And we were still able to function as a unit and receive calls for emergency, send out if there was an emergency. And then, of course, when we got the ultimate call to say no one is allowed to go back outside. Yeah, but we watched Dorian. We watched things come in. We heard the calls. We got all of the cries and everything. So we were physically, and that's why I say this is the team that sometimes people forget. When you hear all of the hero stories, nobody
Yes.
comes to us and say, yeah, but we're the one, we heard those cries, we got those calls, we're
Wow.
the ones who sent people, and people had to report to us to say, we're doing this, we're doing that. All of those calls we got, but we're hardly recognized for our work, but
You're right.
but everybody else is.
Yes, you're working in the background and peripherals,
Yes,
making
yes.
sure that all of these
Yeah,
agencies
yes.
collaborate to mitigate these.
Correct. If somebody calls and say, hey, the police say they're stuck and they can't get somewhere, or the ambulances say they flooded with water trying to get to someone, we're the one who now has to figure out how we're going to get somebody to help those ambulance drivers or the police whose vehicle may have gone down on the road. How are we going to get somebody to get help to where they were going? All of that happens in the EOC.
So here at the EOC, is there, well, we use manager here.
Mhm.
America uses
Mhm.
chief.
Yeah, they use
It-
with the chain of command structure. Yeah,
Yeah.
we would have a EOC manager.
Yes.
Yeah, and that would still ultimately be the administrator, Mr. Cartwright, who I'm referring to.
Okay.
He would be the primary person in the EOC, and then he would have a second in charge, which would be whoever he designates.
Okay.
Now, in the past, we were
Police.
structured where, no, the police, not because of them being the police, they're not the primary person responsible for the EOC. They have their role that they play, but
Yes.
the EOC is actually manned, and the direct chain of command in terms of how it runs is the local government island administrator. He is the ultimate person who the prime minister, the minister would be expecting to hear what's going on in the EOC. So even though everybody is in here, they know their roles. They know
Yes.
they're not the primary person responsible for the EOC. It's still the island administrator.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. I wondered about that. Thank you so much
Yes.
for clearing that up.
Mhm.
It's making sense because I know that in some EOCs you have these organizations kind of running themselves and their own management, but it's good to know that
Yeah.
the setup is,
Yeah,
you know,
because they still have their own EOCs in their departments functioning. But the ultimate EOC, when it comes in times of disaster, once our EOC is open, they can still communicate with their individual, but the primary person, that's why they have to have somebody who is able to give authorization on their behalf, sitting and working in the EOC with us. So we don't have to waste time calling back to their office to say, hey, can we do this? That person who sits here is the one who activates and sends the information to the various departments to say, oh, activate that or send this person. If it's an emergency call, if there's a break-in or something, the police person is sitting here, we channel that call to that person. If there's a fire-related call, we transfer it to the fire. If it's a water utility call, somebody from GB Utility would be in here, we send it to them. If it's a power-related, we send it to the person from the power company. So that's how we work. We channel all the calls to the various agencies because we're all in the same room.
Yes.
But everybody isn't running around dealing with everything. We channel it to whoever is in the EOC at that time.
sounds very structured.
Very, very. Yeah, it takes a lot of moving parts,
Yes.
yeah, to get the work done. And everything is recorded.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Kind of a sidebar. Our training, like your training, you're obviously very well trained in voice and experience, but
Yeah.
your official training would have been through the American system, FEMA?
Well, FEMA is like, this is where I NEMA, but I have done some training with FEMA, but the bulk of my training is with USAID, United States Office for International Development. They actually afforded me the opportunity to be trained at a number of these levels that I'm at now, because I'm also a certified instructor. So I'm able to teach emergency operations training, I'm able to teach relief supplies and distribution, I'm able to teach shelter management, I'm able to teach initial damage assessment and needs analysis, I'm able to teach damage assessment and needs analysis, incident command structure.
Wow. You need to take this class for me.
I've done fire safety training as well as swift water or open water rescue training as well.
And I think that's commendable. You don't usually see, especially in the context of the Bahamas, women
Right.
on the ground.
Yes.
And it's so refreshing and encouraging to see a woman at the forefront who gets on the ground,
Yeah.
because this is usually a male-dominated field. So-
It is. It still is. And that's why I like to encourage the females to say, don't be afraid to venture out.
Yes.
Because it can be rewarding. And like I mentioned earlier, I started this process as a volunteer, having known nothing about this. But when I realized that it turned in from being a volunteer to actually a passion.
Yes.
And so that's why when I'm called to do any kind of teachings or even just speaking, then I'm able to share with especially the young ladies or even the younger generation, this is how being a volunteer can be rewarding.
Yes.
And not to always look for the pay. The pay is eventually going to come.
Yes.
Because that's how I actually got into the government system in
Wonderful.
2015 because of my work as a volunteer.
Yes.
But I've also been able to travel to a number of countries to assist them with their training
Oh.
because of my certification as an instructor. So, for example, I've been to Jamaica, I've been to St. Kitts and Nevis, I've been to Belize, I've been to St. Lucia, and of course the U.S. So it's where if the U.S. says, well, can we have her for a few days, we need her to assist us with training, Barbados as well, then the office would give me the okay and say, hey Tammy, we need you, can you go and help with their training? And that's how I'm able to still function and learn a lot more, because I've had the opportunity to work with a number of different countries.
I can sense the passion, and it's so rewarding when we're doing like what we've been called to do,
Right.
and where our heart is. So
Yes.
I really appreciate your service. Really
Mhm.
appreciate your
Yes.
service and your passion. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Final question: 4 years after Hurricane Dorian, what did we do right, and what are some of our greatest needs
Mhm.
at this particular time?
Mhm.
4 years post Dorian.
Yeah, well, 4 years post-Dorian, I think we're still getting the right done, because we still know, obviously, there's still a number of persons who are in need, but we're also now, through the Ministry for Grand Bahama and also the Bahamas government at large, they're still making provisions for persons to receive that assistance. And the key thing is that some people have fallen in the cracks because, not everybody, we're a pride nation, as we say. Not everybody wants people to know that they're still in need.
Yes.
But we're encouraging them to come forward, and if you still need your roof fixed or you still need some home care, but present it to the right persons.
Yes.
Okay? And then, in terms of, yes? Sorry.
No problem.
Yeah. So, I see we definitely have that. And I think since Dorian, we've in terms of our needs, we've now looked at our shelter program. So we're hoping now that based on weather reports, which we're gonna get more frequent, we will now know how to activate the appropriate shelters, because we know every shelter we had on Grand Bahama went underwater. We couldn't prevent that.
Wow.
So now we're gonna say, if the storm is coming from this way, these are not the shelters we're gonna use. We're gonna go to the ones that we would consider higher or more user-friendly, because if it's coming with water and it's north or south shore, then we will know how to determine. So social services has increased their shelter capacity for the island, which means more churches and more buildings have come on stream. But we're also hoping in the future, through the now Disaster Risk Management Authority, DRM, they are devising a shelter program where we're having shelters built on the islands.
Oh,
With the one
wonderful.
they've started in Abaco,
Wonderful.
where it's going to be a multi-purpose building, and it's going to be able to hold, I think, about 400
Wow.
plus persons.
Great.
So that model that's being done in Abaco, they're hoping to bring that to Grand Bahama and to take it to the other family islands. So in the future, we're looking to kind of not do away, I wouldn't say do away, but at least relieve the churches, and lean to these buildings, because even in using the churches, that's a lot
Yes.
for them.
Yes.
So we're trying, while we appreciate what the churches have done, we want to give them that relief now and say, we're going to bring everybody here. And, and this will now be the actual emergency shelters for the island.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, I've used a lot of your time. I did have one final question, if you have the time.
Yes.
Okay, Professor, she said it was fine. One last question. Are there any mental health needs post-Dorian?
Yes, mental health actually was one of our key components. We actually looked at that first from back as Hurricane Matthew. Matthew, we had that, but with Dorian, we've all been offered mental health,
Services.
services through the Grand Bahama Resilience Center and also the Public Hospital Authority. Because I myself would have sat down with a counselor and say, how are you doing? And they carry you through the process just to make sure we were okay.
Wonderful.
Because we felt we needed that.
Yes.
So that is something we've also implemented in our disaster plan to ensure that the first responders are actually given that opportunity to just decompress.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's something that we definitely welcome, and they're even looking at it more so now because there is a team through Public Hospital Authority that's actually going island to island now and making that direct contact with persons about mental health issues. And we found that there's still we have numbers where if persons are still in need of that they can reach out to the Resilience Center or through Public Hospital Authority, and we'll direct them then and say, hey, this person needs a little more, a little more time to talk and go through their process. But one of the main things is they always to tell us is that you will know when your body is going to say you need a break.
Yes.
Because it happened to me since Dorian, where I went to my superiors and I said, I need a couple of days away from this. It turned out to be a couple of weeks. But it was because while we were also working, and I think a lot of people didn't realize this, we also were affected.
Yes.
My home had 6.5 feet of water in it.
Wow.
I lost everything, and I was still working
Helping others.
here. And nobody really asked what was going on. And I live in an area that actually flooded.
Wow.
So along with losing that, and then I wasn't able to still go and see because I didn't get my orders to say stand down. I literally didn't get to go home until two weeks after Dorian to see what I saw. My sisters and my brother-in-law had to go to my home and begin to open up and just take everything out for me.
Wow.
And this is the kind of things where I'm saying people don't realize what the persons who are working in the EOC were going through. Because to go through that, and then my car, the third one, ran under water here as well too in this parking lot. So I'm dealing with that. I'm still fielding calls. And then also with Dorian, I was actually the supplies officer. So you can imagine, I had a lot. So I recognized when I needed a break.
Yes.
So my break was to just go home and then just sleep, really. Well, they put me somewhere where I was able to do that.
Yes.
And then when my mom said, thank goodness my grandparents were still, because my family actually is from High Rock.
Okay.
Yeah, so when I was able to drive up there and see my grandparents' home, thankfully they are both deceased, but it was a home that we enjoyed going to. After Sunday, after church, you go there and you just relax. Well, I drove into the yard, and it was so weird. I drove into the yard. I saw the front of the house, and I said, oh, the house is still standing. Went to the back, nothing.
No house.
Nothing.
Wow.
And that really took me, because I thought about my grandfather. I said, and my grandfather would have been right there. He would have refused. He's one of those who would have refused to leave.
Yes.
I said, what if he, and I was like, what if he was still in here? Because I know he was not going to come out of that house. So that actually broke me down. But after I had that, the crying moment, and then it was like a relief came over you, and I said, okay, time to get back to work. So, and then of course from Dorian, we ran right into COVID. So we literally didn't stop working.
Yeah.
So that's my story in a nutshell for the last 4 or 5
Listen here,
years.
it is a story of sorts.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Ms. Mitchell, for
Yes.
this accommodation. It was a pleasure to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you too.
And I suspect we will be working together
Yes.
in some way, form or fashion, especially when I'm done with my degree next year.
Yes.
I'm going to make myself available to work and
Yes.
to help and to volunteer. So thank you so much for your
Yeah.
service and for this time.
Yeah, and
God
I
bless you.
congratulate you on going into that field, because it is needed in our country.
Yes.
And the more people we have who are knowledgeable and able to assist, that's a big plus for me. Even though you're male,
Yes.
but I definitely encourage anybody in the
Yes.
field, keep doing the work, because it brings it in the forefront more to say that it's needed.
Yes.
Mhm.
All right. Thank you
Okay.
so much.
All right.
God bless.
Good.
Perfect.